yeah. Get your hands up, yeah. To the floor, yeah. Yeah.
That's right.
Come down, selector.
That's right. Come on.
Hey, we want to welcome everyone to another live episode of You and the Law Podcast Show. We thank everybody for taking the time to stop by and join us for another very informative topic. So let me introduce who I am. I am one of the co-hosts of the show, Virgil Green, and as always, the brother that sits next to me, who goes by the name of Chief Swaggy One, and his new set of eyewear, his new set of glasses. Man, you know what? I just thought about something. You know who you look like, man, in those glasses?
Mr. Magoo.
No, not Mr. Magoo. Spike Lee.
He wishes. he only wishes, man.
Hey, brother, how you doing?
I'm good, man. I'm good. How you doing?
Oh man, I'm doing good, man. It's always good to be in your presence, brother.
Are you too, man? I'm not gonna lie, man. I'm pissed off.
Yeah, man. You know what? You know, you and I talk off air, you know, man.
No, I mean.
Oh, are you talking about the topic that we're gonna be talking about?
Man, I'm pissed off, man. This is crazy, man. And
man. And you know, I hope people will tune in and listen to us live on Facebook Live. We're also streaming live on our YouTube channel. But Keith, this is one of these topics that, like you said, it pisses you off. And I'm going to add to this conversation that we have not, at least I have not heard a lot of these national police associations coming out condemning the actions of these deputies. And I haven't even seen even the Sheriff's Association coming out to say that this is unacceptable behavior from sheriff deputies. So that's a concern that we have not seen or heard these associations coming out, speaking out against these officers, these former deputies who now have been convicted of these charges.
well, Virgil, let me ask you this: When have you heard any of the unions, other than Noble or MBPA, say something about any of these type of involvement, in any of these type of incidents where procedural justice has been violated and excessive force has been used? Let's just be honest. When have you heard anybody say anything?
You're right, man. And, you know, for Keith, for those who may not be aware of what we're talking about, you know, tonight's podcast topic is the Goon Squad. And people may say, what is the Goon Squad? Well, I'm going to show a news clip of what happened. And if those of you who are not familiar with what happened in Mississippi and Rankin County, Mississippi, watch this news clip, and it's going to be very disturbing because, as Chief Humphrey said, it would piss you off just by what these deputies did during this, almost this 90-minute torture of these two Black gentlemen. So.
About 5 former Rankin County deputies, including the chief investigator and a former police officer with the Richland Police Department. They're all admitting their role in the cover-up after the crime. Goon Squad in the hot seat, shackled and handcuffed with duct tape, concealing which county jail they're being held at. 6 former white Rankin County law enforcement officers led into a courtroom to plead guilty on state charges and what prosecutors call a racist torture session and sexual assault of 2 black men. The victims, Michael Jenkins and Eddie Parker, both in the courtroom to witness what their attorney called an historic moment.
We are ecstatic because, to my knowledge, never in the history of Mississippi have, in particular, white officers been held to account for brutality against black victims.
Former Rankin County Chief Investigator Brett McAlpin, Lieutenant Jeffrey Middleton, Christian Dedman, who was a narcotics officer, Deputy Daniel Opdyke, and former Richland officer Joshua Hartfield all pleading guilty to hindering prosecution and conspiracy to hinder prosecution. Authorities say the group tried to hatch a scheme to cover up the crime, destroy evidence, plus plant a weapon and drugs on the victims. Authorities say former Deputy Hunter Elward shot Michael Jenkins in the mouth after Jenkins had been handcuffed and tased. Elward pleaded guilty to aggravated assault, burglary, home invasion, and hindering prosecution.
I enjoyed the view of seeing the walk of shame, the head down, the disgust that everybody that felt, for them and that they feel for themselves. I hope this is a lesson to everybody out there. Justice will be served.
Investigators say the Goon Squad targeted Jenkins and Parker after they got a call about a house in the Braxton community on January 24th. They accused the men of taking advantage of the white woman whose house they were living in. Based on the new plea deals, most of the defendants won't spend much time in state prison. That's raising questions about whether the disgraced former law officers are getting off easy.
Being given 10 years or recommended 10 years with 5 years suspended, or 15 years with 10 years suspended for assaulting someone, for murdering for shooting someone in the mouth, for tasing someone, for torturing someone. We know that that's not true justice.
Now, the 6 defendants will be sentenced on state charges later this year. They're also awaiting sentencing on federal charges. One interesting thing to note, federal prosecutors say there were members of the so-called Goon Squad who were not present the night when Michael Jenkins and Eddie Parker were assaulted. For now, we're live at the Rankin County Courthouse in Brandon. Ross Adams, 16 WAPT News.
Virgil.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so the Goon Squad. So let me ask you a question, man. What sounds right about that name? Number one, why would you be allowed to keep a name like the Goon Squad? And
well, let's take this a little step further.
Because that's what they look like. They look like suits, buffoons. Now they look like the goons. Yeah, they look like buffoons.
You know what? They look like members of the Three Stooges, which is, it was 3 of the Stooges times 2.
Yeah,
that's what they look like. But let's take this a little bit further with our listeners. And if you're just now tuning into the podcast show, tonight's topic is the Goon Squad. So these guys went as far as to have a challenge coin. And for those of you who are not familiar in the police world, police departments make these coins that are challenge coins that we give out to each other. It's kind of a collection. These officers had a challenge coin that was made. So that meant somebody designed it, paid for it, and they received hundreds of them or however many they ordered, and they gave these challenge coins out. It's hard for me to believe, Keith, that the sheriff of this county in Rankin County, Mississippi, had no clue that his office or people that was a part of his office had these challenge coins made that said the Goon Squad.
Had the challenge coins made. There's no way he didn't know, or his department didn't know that this type of stuff was going on. Apparently, they had a history of it. So I guarantee he's probably got one of the challenge coins.
Yeah. And so, there's another clip, there's another news clip that I'm going to show of him. But let's just get back to the clip that we just saw where, did you notice, Keith, that one of the defendants was being represented by a black attorney?
I did.
So here you go out and you torture two black men. One of them is shot in the mouth while you were playing Russian roulette. But you don't like black people and you don't want black people in Rankin County. But guess what? You got to have a black man to represent you. So everybody has a right to fair, fair attorney. I don't know if he was a court appointed or whatever. But I think the other thing that we can talk about in that, Keith, is that I'm going to say, I don't think the sentence that those guys got in state court was justice.
You don't have to worry about that.
Well, I know the federal.
Oh yeah, the real sentencing is coming.
Yeah,
I get what you're saying. There had to be some form of a plea bargain. Because I tell you right now, there had to be a plea bargain for them to get just 10 years. And the thing of those being ran consecutive, because each one of those carry its own sentencing term. So it'd be interesting to know. There had to be a deal cut. There had to be a deal cut in order for that to. Well, you would hope so, because you would think if they were going to make that kind of plea bargain, they would have to meet with the attorneys representing the two gentlemen that were dehumanized. Yeah.
Hey, we got. I want to get to a couple of comments in the chat room from those that are listening on LinkedIn. Rick, says they should ride in jail, and Keith Baker says his comment is that shouldn't the design of the coin and unit name be approved by the chain first? Don't believe the sheriff didn't have any knowledge. Keith, I think that's what we're talking about.
Yeah, but let me say this, and Kenneth's exactly right about that. You would think, and Richard, I appreciate Rick Morrison. You're absolutely right when you talk about the sheriff should know. But I do know that there are units within police departments that they pay for those type of coins out of their own pocket. But I don't think in this situation, I think the sheriff should have known. There should have been an approval. You try to reduce or minimize the number of those challenge coins within your department, but just the fact of that. But it doesn't surprise me, because in a major city department a few years ago, there was an officer who designed a coin basically saying killing hood rats and drug dealers. A coin that he purchased himself and was passing out throughout the department. So even if it wasn't, you would think that somebody within that department would have a problem with that and make mention of that. But you can't make me believe, Virgil, that the sheriff was not aware of it. One of them in there was one of his chief deputies.
Chief investigator deputy at that.
But it's interesting, Virgil, when you go back and you look at these guys' history. As a matter of fact, Virgil, one of these guys had been charged for murder, homicide, and then less than a year later, he was given a job on the sheriff's department.
Yeah, so it's interesting that you bring that up, because throughout, I'm going to show another news clip that addresses these officers that are able to move from department to department. And in that clip, you're going to hear them talk about gypsy police officers who move from department to department or move from state to state. And, oftentimes their background is not even really looked into, because the agency doesn't have the financial resources to do a very thorough background investigation.
Well, I'll tell you about that. I disagree on that.
What, you disagree that agencies don't have
the finances to do that? It doesn't take a lot for agencies.
No, it doesn't.
These are some of the same agencies that do their own criminal investigations. They do criminal histories on people, background. So I don't buy that. Or you can always get another agency, state police or somebody, to run your criminal histories or do your background checks for you, especially if you believe it's going to be a conflict of interest or you don't have the resources. So, man, it goes back to that. I'm going to hire you because I know you. I'm going to hire you because you're part of this system. Mm-hmm. That's a lot of times that's what happens. You've proven yourself. I'll give you a perfect example, man. I know a department that hired someone that was terminated, and they hired somebody that had a sustained untruthfulness charge on them. And although it was substantiated by the department, it was substantiated by upheld by the Civil Service Board. Another department in close proximity hired this person just basically because, we can do that. We don't have to put them through training, and we don't think you did anything wrong, even though you had substantiated from internal affairs, termination by the chief, and then the Civil Service Board. So it happens. Yeah, it happens, and we're also talking about municipal policing, and so.
Well, you got municipal and county policing. Oftentimes they operate two separate ways.
Well, man, I'll tell you, it's interesting that when you read the dynamics behind this entire story, and with the guy that, for the listeners, one of the guys who was involved in this, as a matter of fact, the guy that actually shot these gentlemen had basically told these other 5, if anybody tell, I'm gonna kill them. He's the one that actually came clean and
told them and
told everybody. Yeah. So it's interesting. He basically, they stand on the front porch, get their story together after this unfolds. And then he threatens them and says, hey, I'll kill, hey, do we have an agreement that we're going to kill anybody who comes forward? And then he's the one that comes forward.
Yeah, exactly.
I want to really know what made him come forward. There had to be, when you talk about someone's conscience or whatever, but I really would like to know the real reason what made him come over, what made him tell on himself.
Yeah. Well, Keith, I want to remind those who are just now tuning into the podcast that tonight's topic on You and the Law podcast is the Goon Squad, and we're actually talking about the 5 former officers in Rankin County, Mississippi, who 6. I think one of them was a municipal officer who tortured 2 black men for well over 90 minutes. They went to this house because someone called and said that there were 2 black men there staying with a white woman. And for those who are not familiar with that part of Mississippi, it's right next to Jackson, Mississippi. Rankin County is predominantly a white county, and it's very well known that Rankin County does not want black people to live in their county. They want them to live in Jackson because that's where all the crime is at. They don't want the crime coming to the white county. And Keith, this kind of takes it back to,
and just for the listeners, I don't mean to cut you off. What Virgil's saying is he's not overstating it. He's not making this up. He's not embellishing it.
No, this is known facts. This is
about the sheriff.
Yeah, this is known facts. And like you said, the sheriff has even made this comment before. So
Yeah.
it's widely known with people who live in Jackson, Mississippi. And you know, I wish I would have reached out to our good pastor friend, Pastor Jesse Jackson, who is from, you know, Jackson, Mississippi. So he knows Rankin County. And because Keith, this takes us back to what was seen during the civil rights era. Here we are in 2023, Keith, and we're seeing police officers still commit the same type of crimes against Black people that they were committing back in the 50s and 60s.
Virgil, we missing a whole segment of this puzzle, right?
Yeah, we are.
This puzzle. We're missing the person who made the initial phone call.
And then, yeah, who made the initial phone call?
And that's what I'm saying. I don't know if that person's been identified. I don't know if that's a protected, you know, that might not even be part of open records. I don't know.
Well, I think through what I have found out getting prepared for the show, that there was a neighbor who called the sheriff department and said there were two Black men staying there with the white woman. The sheriff department ordered this Goon Squad to go there to handle business.
Well, hold on, Virgil. Hold on. Let me back up. That's what I was talking about. We know about the phone call. What I'm saying is we're leaving the whole dynamic of it. That person who called basically said that there are two guys living with a white woman, and in so many words, we don't want that, and they may be selling drugs.
Yeah.
So now, to preface that with that statement, there's two Black guys living with, and it turns out that apparently one of the guys had been dating this girl for a while, or they were high school friends or something. So this was not a new relationship.
Yeah.
You know, I think I think that's an important dynamic of it, you know, who called and what the listeners also don't know is one of those guys was off duty.
And they called and he showed up.
And he showed up.
Yeah.
So one of those guys was off duty. And then it comes down to this is one we know. This is the case that's been unveiled.
There's probably others that we don't know about.
Oh man.
Oh yeah. This wasn't the first time, Keith, that these guys did what they did. This wasn't just, hey, we're gonna call each other and we're gonna get the Goon Squad together and we're gonna go out here and we're gonna show these two Black guys what we mean, what we're talking about, and you can't be here with a white woman. You need to get back across over there in the Black part of Jackson. You know, Keith, and I want to get to a comment in the chat room from Rick, who says, Rick, you talk about the police, the blue police culture. See and do nothing. This blue culture of policing is exactly what we're talking about, is that you see it, but you don't do anything, and you don't even talk about this is unacceptable, from whether it was in the 1960s, the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, and here we are in 2023. This is totally unacceptable for police officers of any race. And we can even talk about, Keith, what happened in Memphis with Tyreek Nichols, with those Black police officers. But here in Rankin County, one of the officers playing Russian roulette shot this man in his mouth and didn't offer any kind of aid. And I think they took him to the hospital. And as a matter of fact, they even arrested them and put them in jail to cover this up.
Well, see, what we're doing, Virgil, is we're leaving out a whole bunch of facts. And the fact of the matter is that These men were sexually assaulted.
Oh, we hadn't even got to that part.
Yeah, they were sexually assaulted by items.
By sex toys.
Yeah. These gentlemen were also were made to shower together.
Mm-hmm.
These gentlemen were basically one was assaulted so badly, defecated on himself.
Mm-hmm.
And they were completely humiliated. But you know, the Russian roulette thing goes back to the Santos Rodriguez case in Dallas that I've talked about for years.
Yeah, I remember that.
Same thing happened in 1973 with a white Dallas officer who was the first Dallas officer, or the first officer in Dallas County to be ever be indicted and convicted of the killing of someone. So same thing. Put this, you know, with the exception of one took place in a car, one took place in a house. But this young man was killed based on an officer playing Russian roulette. And you know what? This stuff about, well, I didn't know the gun was loaded. Why would you take I thought I had removed the bullet. No, you didn't. No, so you know yourself, if you eject a bullet out of the barrel of a gun or out of the chamber, if you don't take the magazine out, another bullet is going to upload
to the chamber.
But Virgil, my thing is, how do you know when you start for 90 minutes? What it seems like to me, they had planned on what they were going to do. Oh no, I'm gonna back up. I think what they were looking for things as whatever they could do to humiliate or dehumanize these two gentlemen. Because you think about it, it's like they were just thinking of things. You know, when they saw something, they would do it. If they during the search, whatever they found, they would utilize it. And like you said, one guy's tongue was lacerated. The bullet exited the back of his neck. I mean, that could have been fatal. But the thing about it is, I'd be really interested to read these court documents, and want to know why this guy came forward. Because if you say his conscience, number one, if it was his conscience, he wouldn't have done it in the first place.
Correct.
Or why did you wait until, you plant drugs and stuff like that. So when somebody, and that goes back to my discussion previously about leaving people in narcotics units for years and not having checks and balance systems and not knowing what you say going on. But if you look at some of that stuff about the sheriff was on the scene of a officer involved shooting and did some very heinous things as a young person, as a person lied on the ground dying in front of his deputies. So this is not a like I said, this starts from the top to the bottom. And I'm tired of these sheriffs and police chiefs crying and talking about they didn't know and they're sorry and we're going to make things better. How do you make that better? You can't. You can't fix that situation.
Yeah. Well, hey Keith, for those who are just now tuning into the podcast show, tonight's topic is the Goon Squad. We're talking about the incident that happened in Rankin County, Mississippi, which is a neighboring county to Jackson, Mississippi. And Keith, I want to play this clip for our listeners. And this is a clip from a press conference from the Rankin County Sheriff, who is refusing to resign. He's an elected official, but he's refusing to step down. And he has actually, Keith, when this first happened, so I didn't say this at the beginning of the podcast. This incident happened in February of this year.
Yeah.
It happened in a very short time, either before or after Tyre Nichols' death in Memphis. And for those who are not familiar with where this is at, Memphis and they're not that far from each other. We're talking just a couple of hours drive between these two. One is in Tennessee, one is, but Memphis is closer to the Mississippi borderline as well. So, Keith, I want to play this this press clip from the sheriff as he talks about these now former deputies.
Deputies involved with this incident were placed on administrative leave pending final investigative findings. Due to recent developments, including findings during our internal investigation, those deputies that were still employed by this department have all been terminated.
Rankin County Sheriff Brian Bailey reading off a prepared statement regarding the deputies involved in the January incident where Michael Corey Jenkins and Eddie Parker say they were tortured, tased, and beaten. However, the sheriff didn't offer much else after that.
We cannot, however, confirm or deny any specific facts related to this incident because of active and ongoing investigations.
Malik Shabazz, who's the attorney representing the two men, responding to these latest developments, saying, quote, Sheriff Brian Bailey has finally acted after supporting much of the bloodshed that has occurred under his reign in Rankin County. The next credible and honorable step for Brian Bailey is to resign or to be ousted. End quote. Everything dating back to January 24th. That's when deputies were called out to 135 Connerly Road in Braxton after reports of narcotic activity. While responding, Shabazz says the deputies tased, punched, and sexually abused the two men for 90 minutes, and one deputy shot Jenkins in the face. Body cameras were not activated during this entire incident. In February, the Department of Justice opened an investigation into possible civil rights violations by the Rankin County Sheriff's Department. On June 12th, a civil rights lawsuit was filed against the deputies involved at the Sheriff's Department, seeking $400 million in compensatory and punitive damages. Then, more than a week later, on June 23rd, deputies involved in the incident were fired from the department. While Shabazz is happy to hear that the deputies have been fired, he says he still thinks they should face a stiffer punishment, saying, quote, however, criminal indictments of the deputies from the Attorney General of the state of Mississippi and criminal indictments by the Civil Rights Division of the Department of Justice is the next step in this tough fight for justice in this nasty ordeal. End quote.
Thanks for watching.
You know, Keith, I don't want to speculate, but I guess I'm going to speculate. The sheriff definitely knows more than what he is letting the public know. And the fact that I do recall when this first happened, he was defending the actions of those deputies to say that, hey, now we conducted this investigation. Now he wants to try to do everything he can. Now, once they have been convicted, that he wants to repair this damage between the Black community and his department. And Pam had asked in the chat room about, obviously this is an all-white department, and I believe that there are not any African-American deputies that work for this sheriff department in Rankin County.
Virgil, and the question earlier, did the sheriff know? Well, this one guy had worked for him since 2008.
Oh yeah,
and so even we talk about that shooting I was talking about earlier, it was very questionable. If you read that article or read the stories behind a lot of this stuff, it was questionable, and it was never formally investigated. The scary part about it, is that these actions that were done, when you read about they tasered this, used a taser on these guys, I believe more than 17 times, and it was based to determine which taser had the highest voltage.
The highest voltage, yeah.
They all have the same number of voltage. Thank goodness for the tasers do capture the deployment and how many times they are actually the triggers pulled. But when you think about everything that these two young men went through, this was a hate crime if I've ever seen one. It was just like they were angry. It was angry. And then it comes down, what was the foundation of their anger? Was the foundation of their anger because they didn't find anything? Was the foundation of their anger because the two African-American men living with them? I mean, it's just the actions of these guys. It seemed like every time they would think, what can we do that tops the last thing that we did?
Yeah. Keith, I don't think these guys were sent there to find any drugs. They were sent there, I believe, because, first of all, there was a camera that was at the front door of this home. So they went to the rear, to the back part of this home and kicked in the door. They didn't have a warrant. They kicked in the door because they knew the front door had a camera. So these guys had already did some kind of surveillance around this house, so they wouldn't be detected by the people inside of the home. So clearly, they already had an intent to. They already knew what they were going to do once they got inside the home. They knew who was in. These two black guys were inside the house, and so this just goes to how they plotted. And I think at some point, Keith, were they bold enough to at least they did. They shot this one individual in the mouth. Were they able to carry out and murder them?
See, that's what I wonder, if that was in the plan, and then when they actually shot it, it scared them. Or they thought, man, we've gone too far. Or, I mean, how are we going to cover that? How are we going to cover this up?
Now, Keith, they had already shot into the wall to scare them. And something else I read, they had already shot into the wall to scare these guys, but now they went from shooting into the wall of the house to placing the weapon inside of the mouth of this one guy. But Keith, let's just go back and talk about the heinous acts that these guys did by using sex toys. They actually brought sex toys there with them and
No.
You're trying
when they went through the house searching and looking through drawers, they found these items.
Okay.
So the items belong to someone in the house.
To somebody in the house. But again, Keith, let's just talk about the disturbing act of using these sex toys on grown men, humiliating these men, and as you stated earlier, Keith, making these two men get in the shower. And I could be wrong, but I thought I read something where they even attempted to make these two men have sex with each other.
Yeah, that is true. And basically, it was a humiliation thing. How much humiliation or dehumanization can we cause? And so what was going to happen is they were going to leave that place, and those were going to be stories that they told. Okay, for a fact, Virgil, those were going to be stories, those water cooler stories, or those how do we sit in how you sit in a car and you talk to other people. But that was going to be a story. Now, just think about this, Virgil. Those two guys could have been convicted and sentenced for that, because they could have easily said that these guys resisted arrest.
Yeah,
they could have easily said that, and so that just shows you, man, that how how God looks out.
Well, Keith,
because man, that could have been ugly. Oh my goodness, that could have been ugly.
Yeah,
for those two young men, it was uglier than it was.
Than it was. And I want to get to a comment in the chat room from is it Melanie?
Melanin Queen.
Melanin Queen. That she said, why is this not attempted murder. Now let's flip this around and let's say that these were the two black guys who broke into a home of a white woman, and they did the same thing to that family. Now those two individuals would have been charged with attempted murder. But now here it is. We've got police officers who commit the same crime, but they're not charged with an attempted murder.
Well, we don't know if that was part of the plea. We don't know if that was not part of the plea that they changed. It could have been, because the only one that they would have been able to, I believe, that they would have been able to is the gentleman that actually fired the gun. And he's the one that actually came forward. And I guarantee you his attorney said, can you cut us a deal? Because I don't see how that wouldn't have been attempted murder. I agree. But there had to be some form of a deal cut for him coming forward. I guarantee you that's what happened.
Yeah. Well, Keith, just getting to some other comments in the chat room. Kenneth Baker says another example of sick tactics that they obviously practice on a regular basis. Pam has a comment in the chat room where she says, "So will they also be charged with sexual assault?"
No, they won't be. They basically went with this aggravated assault. I think tampering with evidence and whatever. So that goes back to, I guarantee you, there was some reduced charges there during that plea bargain.
Yeah,
I agree that it is, but apparently they ran those.
They came to some of the kind of plea deals.
Yeah, concurrently or consecutively, whatever.
Yeah, and Rick, who is listening to us on LinkedIn, says they were sent there to ensure the Rankin County standard was upheld. I mean, Rick, you're absolutely right. I mean, the standard in Rankin County is that if you're black, you don't belong in Rankin County. You need to go back to Jackson.
Go across the Pearl River.
Yeah, go across the Pearl River. And that is a comment that the sheriff has made in previous comments that the sheriff made about, something about the Pearl River. So, again, Keith, this is just so disturbing. And I guess, as you stated earlier, the fact that there has not been this heightened conversation in the law enforcement community about this right here. And it's almost like, hey, we can't say anything about it because now our officers or our deputies are going to be mad at us or whatever. I just can't see how any person in this profession thinks that this is an okay conduct from either your sheriff deputy or police officer or a state trooper. If you're wearing a badge and a gun, this is totally unacceptable on so many levels. And it should be, again, you remember, Keith, in Oklahoma a couple of months ago where I want to say it was in McCurtain County, where the sheriff and others people were caught on a video recording talking about hanging black people or doing other things that were targeting toward blacks because this news report, this new local newspaper had left a recording device in the room. The governor of Oklahoma called for the sheriff to step down, but the sheriff is the elected official. The county commissioners would have to remove him. He is still in office. And I think the one thing that I mentioned earlier is that county government law, they make up their own law. They make up their own rules.
Well, there is a way, and I know this happened in Florida, and I think this happened in Texas, but I think there is a way for a sheriff to be
removed by the governor.
Yeah, I think the governor can remove, depending on, I know in Texas and I know in Florida.
Yeah, and that may be due to the statutory power that the governor has in those two separate states. Keith, I want to show this other video clip because it goes to what you brought up about officers, that one of these former officers was charged with murder and
in 2007 he was charged with murder, and then he was hired by the sheriff
in Rankin County. Yeah.
Actually, and he was found guilty.
One of the state's top cops says enough isn't being done to weed out bad officers.
Now, the police profession looks bad, our agency looks bad.
Instead, problem cops are able to move from department to department.
Now we're caught flat-footed because we're not allowed to look at some of those things.
Many agencies don't share information when they fire an officer, allowing that bad cop to get hired again somewhere else.
Defender Kevin Dietz uncovered that it's happening dozens of times in Metro Detroit, and it will put everyone at risk.
When police get in trouble on the job for roughing up a citizen, drug and alcohol abuse, or insensitive racial or sexist remarks, often they are given a choice: resign or be fired. Many walk away, then end up right back on the beat at a new police department where no one is aware of their bad behavior.
They're unaffectionately called gypsy cops, where they move around, and sometimes the hiring agency doesn't have any knowledge of the background.
Sheriff Michael Bouchard says dozens of cops locally have been forced out and in some cases fired, only to end up across town patrolling streets and interacting with the public, potentially putting citizens at risk.
That's especially common in certain kinds of communities that may be financially stressed.
In 2015, Inkster police officer William Melendez was arrested, charged, and sent to prison for beating motorist Floyd Dent following a traffic stop.
They were trying to kill me.
Before Melendez was an Inkster cop, he worked in Detroit. He left after multiple lawsuits and a federal indictment were filed against him for roughing up citizens and tampering with evidence. Melendez tried to get a job at the Oakland County Sheriff's Office, but a background check raised multiple red flags. A short time later, Melendez was hired in Highland Park and in Inkster as a police officer.
To pin a badge on that person's chest after what had transpired at a different agency was a recipe for disaster.
Why should the police be immune from that? They should have some kind of oversight mechanism.
Greg Roll is Floyd Dent's attorney. He says Dent settled his lawsuit for $1.3 million, money taxpayers in the financially troubled city of Inkster had to pay.
We pushed 3 buttons on Google and found all the information necessary to scare us and to make sure that, and to say, what was he doing on the police force?
Residents we spoke with were shocked to hear many small police departments can't afford to do background checks.
You definitely should do a background check, you know, because you don't know what you hired.
And the problem's much bigger than just that. In Michigan, police agencies that force an officer to resign often refuse to tell any other agency why they did it, out of fear that they will be sued. Sheriff Michael Bouchard supports the new Senate Bill 223 that would force police agencies to create and keep records of why each officer left and make the departments immune from civil lawsuits for sharing the information. Some would like to see even more accountability. In Michigan, it is not permitted to have a prospective employee take a polygraph test, but some say before becoming a police officer, one should be quizzed on past crimes, lawsuits, and firings while hooked up to a lie detector.
When I became a police officer, I took a polygraph test. Why would you prohibit that?
It's also prohibited to look at an applicant's private social media accounts. You can learn a lot about a prospective police officer by what they post, but the law only allows employers to look at public accounts, not those with privacy settings.
I would like to know that the people who are looking over the city are, like, I can trust them.
Senate Bill 223 is currently in the House. If it passes there, it will go to the governor's desk for consideration. Law enforcement experts say that would be a good first step, but much more still needs to be done. Kevin Dietz, Defenders.
Hey Keith, I didn't mean to cut you off, man. I think you had a comment right before I played that.
No, I was saying that one deputy, one of the deputies, had actually been convicted of murder, negligent homicide, and received 2 years probation. And less than a year later, he was hired. So let's talk about this situation regarding the notification of other departments. I will say that I do know in Texas, Oklahoma, and Arkansas, when an officer leaves, you are required to sign what's called an F5. Now, I know that's what it was in Texas and Oklahoma. I don't know what it is, and I can't remember what it was in Arkansas, but you're required by statute to sign that form. And on the back of that form, when someone leaves, it is they left honorably. They resigned, left, retired, left under investigation, were terminated, and I think there's one more. They have to sign that, and so that goes to the state. So when a department wants to know, that's part of a background. They go in to determine if somebody was a previously employed. That form is filled out, which lets them know this person was fired under, but the documentation is there to determine, to show why that person left the previous agency. You can't get around that. You have to, if someone had a previous employed, it was previously employed by a law enforcement agency in those states, that is, you're required to look at that. You're required to review that. You're required to present that. But I do know that there was one point in Oklahoma that you could mandate that a recruit would, a potential candidate would provide you information for their Facebook. It was said that you cannot mandate someone give you information from their Facebook.
Personal social media.
Yeah. So I mean, you're right. It's interesting that there are the things that could probably help us determine if someone has some skeletons we're unable to utilize. Why would you not polygraph? Really?
Well, you know what, Keith, I think a lot of information is discovered through a background through the background. Agencies hire out. Some agencies do their own in-house background investigation. Some agencies do, use external consultants to do background investigations. And then you also have your psychological component of that. So there are systems in place to inform these agencies to make better decisions on who they are hiring. And I remember there was something that Rick or somebody put in the chat earlier that, these agencies, I think it was Rick who said, because of the mass exodus of officers, departments are forced on playing the number game. If you got a pulse, we will give you a badge. And this is for chiefs and sheriffs are hiring for the agency, not the profession. Rick, if you're still listening, that's a good point. There's not a lot of people who are trying to get into this profession. And if you got officers who have some experience with some baggage, Keith, they're going to take a chance on hiring that officer in hopes that he don't mess up. But they do know about the baggage that he brings to their agency.
Yeah, they know. It's all about, who can we, it's not going to cost us anything to train this officer.
Exactly.
This officer came from a major city that we know provides quality training. And so, and then a lot of times, I know a situation recently in Norman where you had an officer, not on the Norman Police Department, so let me clarify that, but they worked in a training environment in the city of Norman and was fired based on the fact that there was mistreatment of recruits by him. And because he is a top-notch trainer, he was hired by the sheriff's department there.
Mm-hmm.
Because, we get an outstanding trainer, not the fact that you get somebody who has a problem, and especially a problem with women and people of color.
Yeah.
But you hire him because he's a good trainer.
Yeah.
That's what we're talking about right there.
Yeah. Well, Keith, we had another comment in the chat room from Casey who says, breaking and entering without a warrant, trespassing, sexual assault, rape, attempted murder, and more. And these guys get on state charges 10 years, they may serve 5, but there still is the federal case that they will have to go before federal prosecution on that. I can see on the federal case that they're going to get much more prison time.
I think the minimum on a violation of civil rights is, I think it's 10 years. Don't quote me on that. That's the minimum.
The minimum,
not the maximum.
Yeah. So there again, the amount of time these 6 former law enforcement officers will serve will not come close to the pain, the harm, the anguish that they put those 2 men through in that 90-minute ordeal that they went through. And Keith, and I have to say this, man, sometimes you got to do the right thing if you're the head of an agency. It may not, it may impact the way you live. But Keith, I'm gonna ask you this question. Should this sheriff decide, hey, listen, it's time for me to step down. There's time for new leadership, because you're staying in that position and now you're trying to build a better bridge between you and the Black community. You didn't do that before. So what's going to make that change now just because your deputies got caught and you got this goon squad?
Well, I think the sincerity of it, the lack of sincerity of it, the fact that there's a history of it, the culture. I think you have to, and a real leader would say, I'm not running, I'm gonna resign, I'm not running again, because you can't fix that. That current administration cannot fix that based on this. And what's going to end up happening, you're probably at some point, a lot of stuff's going to come out that can't come out right now because you've got some additional things and appeals and stuff like that. But there's going to be some other stuff that comes out that's going to show that there was a history of this, that he was aware of that. And that's going to be the interesting part of this, Virgil. The interesting part of he's not going to be able to hide behind that anymore.
Well, and I'll say this, and I think, Rankin County is a predominantly white county. So will he be, if he runs for reelection, will he be reelected? I'm, pretty sure, because the county is made up of what their sheriff department looks like. And so you have people who just, even how horrible this act was, you still have people who they don't think, oh, the sheriff, he didn't know anything about it. He's a good old guy. He wouldn't treat anybody like that.
Well, these guys had a criminal history anyway, so they didn't catch him on this. They were going to catch him doing something else. I mean, those are the conversations that I've heard, not with this case, but in the past.
In the past, yeah.
And you have cases like this. You heard that during George Floyd.
Yeah.
Oh, well, he used narcotics. That don't have anything to do with it. They don't have anything to do with that behavior of those officers.
Well, and Keith, as I mentioned, we're coming up on the last few minutes of the podcast that, when you got 5 Black police officers in Memphis who beat the crap out of Tyreek Nichols, who later lost, who later died.
Who killed Tyreek.
Who killed Tyreek Nichols. For those who are listening to us now and those who will be listening to our rebroadcast shows, whether you Black, white, Latino, whatever race you are, and you're wearing this badge, if you commit an act of violence like that, it deserves to be talked about. It deserves to be corrected. And people in positions that we hold need to make sure that these things do not occur within your agencies?
Well, Virgil, is just the fact. I still, my hashtag is purge the profession, and this profession needs a good purging of these type of officers.
Well, Keith, you bring up when you use the word purge, man, I'm always thinking of podcast topics. That's a good topic to talk about, purging policing.
Yeah. But you know what, Virgil? This is what, and I know we're at the end of the podcast, but this is what's going to be interesting, man. This type of behavior is still not going to prevent someone with a badge from doing the same thing.
Oh yeah, you're right, man.
I mean, if Derek Chauvin and all the behavior that they displayed, the actions that they took, does not get our officers to thinking about, man, I can't do this, or man, this is not. Then I don't know what is.
Yeah, because everybody's going to come up with an excuse. There's a reason why this happened. Oh, these guys are, the stress of this job and so forth. Everybody is making excuses for the actions of these officers versus saying that this is unacceptable. And you're going to be held accountable for your actions.
But Virgil, how do you hire somebody with a murder conviction?
That's hard. That is, even if they were found not guilty or whatever, to know that this person was on trial for murdering somebody who was an African American, and you're going to put them in a uniform, there is something seriously wrong with that, brother.
Yeah.
Seriously. Well, hey, man, it's been great. It's been another great topic, and we want to thank all of those who tuned in to the podcast tonight. And if you missed any parts of this broadcast, you can definitely find our podcast show on Amazon Music Podcast, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Anchor. Wherever you listen to your podcast, you can listen to this episode and many other episodes. And also, if you got a topic that you would like for us to talk about, shoot us an email to youandthelaw2020@gmail.com, or put it in the chat room while we're on the podcast show. But we always like to hear from those who continue to follow us every Thursday on our live broadcast. Chief Swaggy One. This man, I'm gonna start calling you Spike Lee.
So is that what we're gonna start doing?
No.
We're gonna start giving each other.
No. Hey,
you change that real quick.
Hey, brother, it's been real. It's been good as always. Let's see, we got another comment in the chat room here. Rick says, keep it real. Yeah. Well, Rick, we definitely gonna keep it real, and we appreciate you listening to us on LinkedIn. And as always, if you're able to tune in next Thursday at 6 p.m. Central Standard Time, you're gonna get another real topic on You and the Law podcast show. So, brother, until next Thursday, but we need to, I keep talking to you about, we need to do this.
We are. We're going to do it.
Yeah.
The Twitter. We're going to do it. Look for us real soon on Twitter discussions.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, hey, brother, we'll talk again, and we'll see everybody next Thursday on You and the Law podcast show.
Get your hands up, yeah. To the floor, yeah. Yeah.
selector.